What's up, everybody? My name is Doug, and this is Leaving the Dream. Thank you guys for tuning in. Today, we're going to be getting into the Breonna Taylor case out of Louisville, Kentucky. I've had a lot of requests for this. Everybody's been saying, Doug, can you please break this case down so that we understand it and we know what happened from your perspective? So that's what we're going to get into today. So as always, I am speaking from my perspective as a former law enforcement officer, and everybody that we talk about today is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. So this is what we're going to get into today. I'm going to give you basically an outline of what we're going to get into. I have my computer pulled up, and I'll leave all the references and all the sources. I will leave links in the description below. Make sure you go and check those out, and as always, do the research yourself. We are going to be getting into the initial narrative first. The initial narrative that we all heard. You, me, everybody, we heard the same narrative. We're going to get into what that narrative was, and then we're going to break down the warrant. We're going to break down the actual warrant, what it said, what it gave the officers power to do. Then we're going to get into the timeline, the minute by minute, the day by day, things that we know, that we have proof of, so that you can see what actually did happen and make up your own mind. Then we're going to get into the accusations, the things that are being kind of thrown out here and there as to the mishandling of this case with the officer, the prosecutors, and the grand jury. And then I'm going to give you my opinions on the case, what I think. We're also going to talk about the forecast, what I think is going to happen when this is all over. And as time goes on, how this is going to affect our communities. And then I'm going to try to give my advice on how we can change and get better at life moving forward. I think that understanding and knowledge is the key. And if we can understand perspectives and we can understand the facts, then we can use those facts with the experience that we have in life, and we can make our own decisions, and we can move forward in a healthy community where we all get along and we're actually better because of it. All right, so first we're going to get into who was Breonna Taylor. What we know about Breonna Taylor, she was a 26-year-old woman who was fatally shot by the Louisville Metro Police Department on March 13th, 2020. She was previously an EMT, but currently worked at a hospital as an emergency room technician. Apparently she worked at 2 different hospitals. Okay, who was Jamarcus Glover, who is one of the main characters in this whole story? Jamarcus Glover was basically the key figure in the narcotics investigation linked to Breonna Taylor. Glover was Taylor's ex-boyfriend. They were no longer together, but apparently remained in a passive friendship. He had 2 bench warrants issued on July 27th in connection with a 2019 criminal case. He's 30 years old and was the main target in the warrants that swept those homes on Elliott Avenue. He was basically the reason why Breonna was involved in this. All right, the next person we're looking into is Kenneth Walker. Who was Kenneth Walker? Kenneth Walker was Breonna Taylor's current boyfriend, and she was living with him at the time, at least staying with him, or he was staying with her, I should say. Then we have Jonathan Mattingly, who is the Louisville Metro Police Department officer who joined in 2000. He was a sergeant and was a part of the narcotics division in 2016 until the present. And then we have Brett Hankinson, who was a Metro Police Department detective. He joined in 2003. And then we have Miles Cosgrove, who was a police department officer who transferred to the department's narco division in 2016. So that's 6 people that we're going to be talking about. All right, so this is the initial narrative that everybody heard about. This is the first thing I heard about. This is the first thing my wife heard about and all my friends heard about. And every time I talk to them about this case, the first thing they repeat is the narrative that I'm about to talk to you about. It will sound very familiar, I'm sure. Breonna Taylor, a black emergency medical technician, was sleeping in her apartment when cops broke into her place thinking it was a different apartment and shot her in her sleep. That's when the activists took to the streets and social media. She got jumbled in with the whole George Floyd thing. This got real crazy and blew out of proportion. I remember hearing that they weren't supposed to be in that apartment. It was the wrong apartment, that they didn't find anything, and that she got shot and she was sleeping when they did it. Turns out none of that is true. I actually looked through the affidavit. I looked through the warrant. I looked through the timeline of what happened and court documents, everything that's available online, which I will leave descriptions for, and none of that stuff happened. So that's what we're going to get into today. This is key to this whole thing. This will be the first element in involving Breonna Taylor with what happened, and it's going to be important, I promise. I got this, and I'll leave a link in the description, from yumpu.com, and there is a watermark on it that says tatumreport.com, so they must have taken it from Brandon Tatum. But in any case, this is dated 12 3, 2016. So December 3rd, 2016. And it is about Breonna Taylor. It says that the Louisville Metro Police Department Homicide Unit learned that the vehicle their most recent victim, Fernandez Bowman, was found in was a rental and had been rented by Breonna Taylor with an address of 3003 Springfield Drive, number 4, Louisville, Kentucky. At 0530 hours, Detective Y. Baker and Jay Speaks went to Miss Taylor's address to conduct an interview regarding any knowledge she may have had that would be relevant to the homicide. Upon contact with Breonna Taylor, detectives observed a male in the apartment with her, identified as Jamarcus Glover. Miss Taylor stated that she didn't know the victim and that she found out what had possibly happened from her boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover. Miss Taylor stated that she had been dating Jamarcus for 3 to 4 months and allowing him to drive her rental car. Mrs. Taylor provided detectives with a contact phone number. This, coincidentally, was the same phone number that Jamarcus Glover later provided on February 14th when he got his car towed, when he called the Metro Police Department's 1st Division to file a complaint for his vehicle being towed, as well as the same phone number that is consistent with the history of jail calls between Jamarcus Glover and Miss Taylor. It is also important to note that the homicide victim is the brother of Demarius Bowman, which is one of Jamarcus Glover's associates, and he had been arrested with Jamarcus Glover numerous times. So to break this down for you, the dead person, whose name is Fernandez Bowman, was the brother of Demarius Bowman, who was one of Jamarcus Glover's associates, and he'd been arrested with Jamarcus numerous times. He's the homicide victim. The brother of one of Jamarcus Glover's associates was found dead in a trunk of a car that was rented by Breonna Taylor. She is connected to a murder, or at least a murderer. And this was in 2016. So that means in December, she said that she had been dating Jamarcus for 3 to 4 months. So that would put you back to August. August of 2016 to December 2016 at least, we know they were dating. Okay, so I've established that story. That's way far ahead. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the warrant. Let's look at the warrant that was issued legally, that was submitted for. The affidavits were submitted. They were reviewed by a judge. I think her name's Mary Shaw, and Mary Shaw approved them, signed all of them. So let's look at this warrant. Here's what the warrant says. The premises, so the actual place that the warrant is issued for, which is very important. Warrants are very specific. The judge only signs off on has to be a specific area of that house for specific items. It's very, very surgical. This one is issued for St. Anthony Gardens, 3003 Springfield Drive, number 4, Louisville, Kentucky. This is very precise. It's very long, very tedious. A judge has to read it line by line. If there's any screw up, she says no. It takes hours to write up affidavits. It says that this is a multifamily 2-story apartment complex with beige vinyl siding, multicolored brick, and brown shingles. The numbers 3003 are in black lettering arranged vertically on a single column of the apartment building. The specific apartment has a sliding glass door that opens to a small patio on the first floor of the complex. The specific apartment has a green door with a gold-plated number 4 at the top center of the front door. The apartment complex is located within St. Anthony Gardens. That's how surgical and precise these are. So I want to throw away this perception that warrants are thrown together real fast and rubber stamped. Negative. Because those affidavits are submitted to the judge, she signs them, then they're held on to. So when the searches are actually performed, you don't then go back and get to fix warrants. Those things are signed and notarized and stamped and all that good stuff. So that if something goes wrong, you can go back and look at them, and they're the original copies from before the issue took place. It says that in the actual warrant, they named a 2017 Dodge Charger SRT that was red with the license plate MTA 7305 with the VIN number and everything. A white 2016 Chevy Impala with Kentucky plates. And here's the people that are named on this warrant. Jamarcus Cordell Glover, Adrian Orlands Walker, and Breonna Taylor. Those are the 3 people. And here's what they're looking for. marijuana, cocaine, heroin, meth, and all illegal narcotics or paraphernalia as described in the Kentucky Revised Statutes 218 Alpha. Any money that are proceeds from drug trafficking, any safes that are used to store the money, any weapons that may be used to protect illegal narcotics or money, any paperwork that may be the record of narcotic sales, any records that indicate transport, concealment, or sales of narcotics, any paper that may be evidence of individuals living in the residence, any documents to include mail letters which may indicate financial activity stemming from illegal activity, any electronic recording media, computers, software, cameras, or any other devices that have illegal narcotics activities on them, and any items that may be of evidence of other violations from the Kentucky Revised Statutes. Very specific, and if it's not one of those things, they can't touch it. That's why there's so many things listed in there. I'm going to read this warrant to you now. I want you to hear this. Acting on the information received, the affiant, who's the officer submitting this to the judge, conducted the following independent investigation. Here are the elements of this crime, guys. Number one, on January 2nd, the affiant had the police tech unit place a pole camera at the intersection of South 24th and Elliott. Within an hour of surveillance, the affiant witnessed approximately 15 to 20 vehicles go to and from 2424 Elliott Avenue within a short period of time, which is indicative of trafficking of narcotics, right? So they're looking at the trap house, 2424 Elliott. They got a camera on it. They watched 15 to 20 vehicles go within an hour. That's every 5 minutes? Every 4 minutes? I mean, it's crazy. On January 2nd, 2020, detectives observed Adrian Walker, in operation of the red Dodge Charger, go to and from 2424 Elliott Avenue for a short period of time. Adrian Walker has a pending court case for convicted felon in possession of a firearm, drug paraphernalia, and trafficking of marijuana, trafficking a controlled substance in the first degree. 6 days later, on January 8th, at 1:36 p.m., detectives observed Jamarcus Glover operating the above listed red 2017 Dodge Charger with Adrian Walker as a passenger. So now we got Jamarcus Glover and Adrian Walker in that red Dodge Charger. Jamarcus Glover is seen on a zoomed camera dropping a large blue cylinder-shaped object near the rocks and then appears to cover it up to avoid detection. Jamarcus Glover has the following pending court cases: convicted felon in possession of a firearm, convicted felon in possession of a handgun, receiving stolen property. It was a firearm, it was a stolen gun. Drug paraphernalia, to buy or possess, trafficking a controlled substance in the first, possession of a controlled substance in the first, possession of a controlled substance in the first, cocaine, heroin, tampering with physical evidence, trafficking of marijuana less than 8 ounces, first offense, trafficking of a controlled substance, first offense, cocaine, tampering with physical evidence. This dude is a bona fide criminal. Tampering with evidence, a bunch of possession charges, a bunch of trafficking charges, buying and selling firearms illegally, buying a stolen firearm, drug paraphernalia. I mean, the dude is all the way deep. This is a full-blown hustler out here dealing. He's a drug trafficker. That's it. And these are trap houses. It said that the officer conducted surveillance multiple times on the site near the physical location of 2424 Elliott Avenue through the pole camera and witnessed on occasion subjects running from 2424 Elliott Ave to the same rock pile near the property line of 2425 and 2427 Elliott Avenue, where Jamarcus Glover dropped the suspected narcotics, and then subjects run back to 2424 Elliott Avenue. The affiant believed through his 10 years of narcotic-related and detective work that Jamarcus Glover and Adrian Walker are the sources of narcotics for the trap house at 2424 Elliott Avenue. When the narcotics being dealt from 2424 are low and the vehicle or pedestrian traffic is low, Mr. Walker or Jay Glover will show up operating the red Dodge Charger and appear to re-up or drop off drugs at 2424 Elliott Avenue. Mr. Walker and Mr. Jay Glover are seen either entering or exiting that address or going to drop suspected narcotics at the rock pile near the property line. Once they leave the area, the normal pedestrian and vehicular traffic will resume. This affiant, the person writing this, has observed the listed red Dodge Charger make frequent trips from 2424 Elliott to 3003 Springfield Drive. That's Breonna Taylor's address. Both Mr. Glover and Mr. Walker have been known to operate this listed vehicle. On January 16, 2020, during the afternoon, the affiant witnessed Jamarcus Glover operate the red Dodge Charger. Mr. J. Glover pulled up and parked in front of 3003 Springfield Drive. Then J. Glover walked directly into apartment 4 without knocking. After a short period of time, J. Glover was seen exiting the apartment with a suspected USPS package in his right hand. Then he got back into the red Dodge Charger and drove straight to 2605 West Muhammad Ali Boulevard, which is a known drug house. It was already raided. Then the affiant verified through the U.S. Postal Inspector that Jamarcus Glover has been receiving packages at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment 4. The affiant knows through training and experience that this is not uncommon for drug traffickers to receive mail packages at different locations to avoid detection from law enforcement. The affiant believes through training and experience that Mr. J. Glover may be keeping narcotics and or proceeds from the sale of narcotics at the Springfield Drive address. The affiant has observed the listed 2016 Impala park in front of 2424 Elliott Avenue on different occasions. This vehicle is registered to Breonna Taylor. The affiant has verified through multiple computer databases that Breonna Taylor lives at 3003 and Springfield Avenue. The affiant verified through multiple computer databases as of February 20th, Jamarcus uses 3003 Springfield as his current home address. Mr. J. Glover and Mr. Walker are acquaintances and have been seen going to and from 2424 Elliott Avenue. Additionally, the red Dodge Charger has been driven by these individuals mentioned within this affidavit. The affiant has witnessed during physical surveillance the suspected drug traffickers sharing the red Dodge Charger numerous times during transport for their suspected narcotics. Those are all the elements that you needed to hear about to understand why this warrant was issued. Here's where the no-knock comes in handy. Line 15 of this warrant. The affiant is requesting a no-knock entry to the premises due to the nature of how these drug traffickers operate. These drug traffickers have a history of attempting to destroy evidence. These cameras on the location that have compromised detectives once an approach to the dwelling is made and have a history of fleeing from law enforcement. The affiant has reasonable and probable cause to believe and believes grounds exist for issuance of a search warrant based on the aforementioned facts, and the judge signed it. I just read you guys that warrant. In there are all the facts that take you through on that journey. It's like a chain of custody. You need one to get to the next, to get to the next, to get to the next. That's where we're at right now. Breonna Taylor is seen with these guys driving these cars. They're driving Breonna's cars. They know that the 2424 Elliott house is a trap house. They know that Breonna goes there. They know that they drive together. They know that this guy also will run into these properties, will run into Breonna Taylor's apartment. We know that he is receiving packages at her address on Springfield because the postal inspector gave him that information. We know that he's hiding drugs outside. We know when he's re-upping. We know that she is seen at the trap houses, and we know that they're seen at her property, in her cars, and that he received mail there. We watched him carry out a package. Breonna Taylor is linked, unequivocally, absolutely linked to these guys. That is probable cause to assume that this is the place that he keeps money and or drugs for safekeeping. That doesn't mean that she's dealing. That's the exact reason why he probably wanted to use her, because she wasn't dealing. That if those trap houses got hit or they got robbed by other drug dealers, that everything would be safe. And now we know, based on the phone calls, the phone records we have from the jail, we have them talking on the phone. We hear them talking about hiding money. And we know that later, after Breonna was killed, that her boyfriend asked somebody on the phone if they can go and get his money, which is at Bree's house. She had like 14 grand of his money. She was keeping safe for him. She is connected. And the warrant went after her, went after all those associates, and went after her apartment, and went after those other trap houses. There was the 3 right next to each other on Elliott, and there's the other one. She was a part of this. There was no accidents. They knew where they were at. They hit multiple houses at the same time. These things aren't thrown together, guys. This is how this works. I've done ops before. I've written up ops plans. And how they work is it'll be like a packet. It'll be like a packet like this. It could be 30 pages long, maybe more. And what you do is you guys set up somewhere. You stage. Everyone pulls up their cars. You got the white car that's got the guy in the uniform ready to make arrests. You got the plainclothes guys. You got SWAT team. You got whoever you're bringing in on this op. You tell them, hey, so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, you guys are going to be my eyes. You need VP, stands for vantage point. You guys set up on this corner, you guys set up on this corner, you set up at this house, look through this window. We need eyes on the house. You always need eyes so you have people making observations, seeing that everybody's okay, seeing when there's changes, that kind of movement. Then you hand out these packets to everybody and you say, here's the house, here's the address, here's the MapQuest, like the aerial footage. Here is the people that may be involved. Here are all their pictures. Here's any information you need to know about them. Here's the cars they drive. Here's the known associates. Here's the drugs we're looking for. Here's a surveillance video of this handing this guy to drugs. Or here's a surveillance video of this guy carrying a gun. Here's the layout of the house. I think there's a door on the left. There might be a long hallway. So make sure when we bust the door down, we're not sitting in that fatal funnel. That's how they talk. Everybody understands. They go through this. This takes hours. There probably is even a name on the operation. And they go through this. This is like fine-tooth comb. So now you have the detective that wrote up this case, spent hours and hours and hours writing up an affidavit. This is going to be legal in court, and he knows it. You can't go back on it. It's not like maybe it'll get reviewed, maybe it won't. 100%, the judge is going to read it. And you don't want to be the dummy that screwed up. So you go through it with a fine-tooth comb, you make sure everything's perfect. Then you give it to the judge. The judge reads through everything. You can read the timestamps. It took minutes for each of them. And read through them, signed off on them. Now you go to this briefing where you all sit around and the guy who's running the ops plan has to tell everybody, this is what we're looking for, this is who they are, this is why they're dangerous, this is what they're doing. Look for this guy, this guy, this guy. Look for this evidence, this evidence, this evidence. How are we going to do it? Who's ready? Did you bring the shield? Did you bring your AR? Who's got the shotguns? That kind of stuff. Then they say, okay, I'm going to go in. We're going to tap up. I'm going to go in first. If we got doors over here, this is where I'm going to go. If we got a long hallway, we're going to do this. If they come to the door, this is what we're going to do. If they don't come to the door, this is what they're going to do. They go through everything. This is very well thought out. This wasn't just thrown together. I think that's important to know. Okay, timeline. So you can see the timeline of events of what happened. On December 30th, 2019, police executed 3 search warrants in the Russell neighborhood, seizing several guns and narcotics. Among 6 people subsequently arrested is Jamarcus Glover, who was Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend. On January 2nd, just 3 days later, using surveillance camera, police see a white Chevy Impala pull up in front of 2424 Elliott Avenue. One of the houses hit with a search warrant just a few days earlier. Glover gets out of the passenger side of the car, which is registered to Taylor. So, Breonna Taylor had a car that was registered to her. The car pulls up to 2424 Elliott, and Glover hops out of the passenger side of the car. So 2 weeks later, on January 16th, Glover is seen driving to Taylor's Springfield Drive apartment and walking inside. She lived at, I think, 3003 Springfield Drive. They observed him drive to her apartment and walked inside, directly inside. The reason why that's important is just because he walked directly in to show that he was allowed to be there. He didn't have to ask permission or knock or whatever. After a brief stay, police said that he left with a suspected USPS package, and then he drove to a house on West Muhammad Ali Boulevard, which was also hit in the search warrant on December 30th. About a month later, 30 days later, after an officer towed his car on February 14th, which was Valentine's Day, from the West Muhammad Ali Boulevard, Glover attempts to file a complaint against the officer, but the phone number he gave on the complaint was registered to Breonna Taylor. This is important because it's linking him to Breonna Taylor, and this whole case rests on the fact that she was linked to this guy. Then on March 12th, basically 30 days later, Detective Joshua Janes requests 5 no-knock search warrants from Circuit Court Judge Mary Shaw for an ongoing narcotics investigation. So this will come up later, I'm sure, and you guys can Google this if you want, but there's this place-based investigations unit of their CID, their Criminal Interdiction Division. And people are starting to make accusations that they were trying to repo these houses so that they could fix them up and sell them as a part of gentrification of the area. That's very conspiracy theory based. I don't put any weight on it, but you will probably hear about that coming up in the future. They requested 5 no-knock search warrants from Mary Shaw. That was in the middle of the day on March 12th. Well, at 12:25 p.m., she signed off on the affidavits for the first 2 warrants for houses at 2424 and 2425 Elliott Avenue. 6 minutes later, she signed the affidavit on 2426 Elliott Avenue. So you have 2424, 2425, and 2426. These houses are boom, boom, boom. Then 4 minutes later after that, she approved the 2605 West Muhammad Ali Boulevard. All 4 homes are in the Russell neighborhood. About 10 minutes later, she signed off on the warrant for Breonna Taylor's apartment, 10 miles away in South Louisville. In the affidavit for the warrant, James wrote that Glover's car had made frequent trips to Taylor's Springfield Drive apartment, that Glover walked directly into Taylor's apartment on January 16th, that a U.S. postal inspector verified that Glover received packages at Taylor's apartment, and that Taylor's car had been seen in front of the Elliott Avenue address on different occasions. At 9 p.m. that day, March 12th, Taylor and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, got home from dinner at Texas Roadhouse. They climbed in bed and put on a movie. At 10 p.m., an hour later, police officers get briefed on their entry plan for Taylor's apartment. Just before midnight, so about 2 hours later, before serving the warrant, Mattingly said he drove by Taylor's apartment while another officer, Detective Mike Campbell, had an eye on the house. The only thing Campbell saw while watching Taylor's apartment, Mattingly said, was that the light on the TV in the bedroom was on. Police thought that she would be home alone. Inside the apartment, Taylor had fallen asleep as the movie Freedom Writers played, and Walker said he was starting to doze off. At 12:40 a.m., just after midnight, officers were in place outside of Taylor's apartment and began to knock on the door. After a few knocks, Mattingly said they began to identify themselves as police. The knocking startles Taylor and Walker out of bed, and they began yelling out, asking, "Who's there?" Walker said they didn't hear a response. After about a minute and hearing no response from inside, police used a battering ram to knock in the door. Inside, Walker grabbed his gun as both he and Breonna Taylor pulled on clothes and went to answer the door. They left the bedroom and hadn't made it down the hallway before the door came off of its hinges. At 12:42 a.m., neighbors in the St. Anthony Garden Apartments called 911 to report gunshots. Walker admitted that he fired one shot as a warning, aimed at the ground, was still unable to see and unclear who was at the door. Mattingly and detectives Miles Cosgrove and Brett Hankinson returned fire. I think it was like 20 rounds. Officers on scene called dispatch to report that one officer had been shot, and officials say that this is the shot that Walker fired, and Taylor was struck in the return fire by police. At 12:47 a.m., Walker calls 911 and says that somebody kicked in the door and shot his girlfriend. And at 12:48 a.m., Taylor's official time of death is announced. 10 miles away on Elliott Avenue, police have Glover, her ex-boyfriend, the main target of the narcotics investigation, and 3 of his associates in custody. Officers seized drugs, guns, and cash from the Elliott Avenue properties. The 5th warrant on West Muhammad Ali Boulevard is not executed, probably because of the shooting. At 1 a.m., police arrest Walker after commanding him to walk backwards as he leaves the apartment. At 1:10 a.m., police tell dispatch that there's a woman inside the apartment. At 1:46 a.m., the EMS left Taylor's apartment complex after she was pronounced dead, basically. At 3:35 a.m., police returned with a second search warrant for Taylor's apartment. Inside, they found shell casings and bullets. Police recover no drugs or cash, though they do find mail for Glover. At 3:53 a.m., Sergeant Amanda Sealy and Sergeant Chad Tinnell of the Public Integrity Unit interviewed Walker, who insisted he didn't know it was police on the other side of the door. He said, and I quote, "The only reason I even had the gun out was because we didn't know who it was. If we knew who it was, that would not have ever happened," Walker said. Okay. That was the timeline. Now you know everything that really happened. So we're going to go from here. The reason why everybody got upset, the accusations that were made, besides the false narrative that the media put out there about her being asleep, she's an EMT who was asleep with her friend in the wrong house. That's not what happened. She's not even an EMT. She's an emergency room tech. She had quit that job or was fired or something along those lines. I'm not really sure. I couldn't find the facts on that online. But having heard that timeline, there were very critical things in that timeline that make a lot of sense that we really have to focus on. The fact that we know in the December 30th search warrants that several guns and narcotics were found in those trap houses and 6 people arrested along with Jamarcus Glover. We know that Breonna Taylor's car pulled up at one of those trap houses 3 days later, and Glover got out of the passenger side of that car. That's registered to her. We also know that that dead body was found in her car. That one rental car she had, it was registered to her. We do know that Glover was driving to her Springfield apartment. We do know that his phone that he called from and made a complaint from, and the phone number called from the jail, was registered in Breonna Taylor's name. We know that the warrants were legitimate. They were reviewed, and they were signed off on. They were 5 no-knock warrants. Apparently they had the no-knock warrants, but based on what we have in the statements we have, they did knock, and even the suspect said that he knew that they had knocked. Kenneth Walker admitted that he heard the knock. So they did knock even though they had the no-knock warrant. Glover received packages at Taylor's apartment. We know that that night they got home from Texas Roadhouse. They climbed in bed and put on a movie. And at 10 o'clock, the briefing happened. So about an hour after they started watching the movie, police officer already set up doing that briefing that we talked about. Just before midnight, Mattingly, one of the officers, drove by and saw the light of the TV on inside the house and thought that she was there by herself. So he did like a drive-by, basically, to see what was going on, which is very, very common. We do know that there were several shots fired from the police. I think, based on what I'm seeing, I'm only seeing the one shot being fired at them. But I can tell you, when you're lined up, your squad is lined up, you got the dude in front with the battering ram, the shield, and you guys are lined up waiting to make entry. It's very dangerous. It's a very volatile situation. When you start getting shot at, game over. Especially when you're in that fatal funnel. You got that door. The door gets kicked in, they take shots, they start firing back. Boom, 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 boom. The thing for me that is kind of off is, how does Taylor get shot, right? When what we really have here, especially from the statements of her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker shot first. So he shot at the officers, but when they returned fire, he wasn't in the hallway. So either he ran out of that hallway or he hid behind Taylor. We don't know, but he was in the hallway to shoot the gun, and when they fired back, he wasn't in the hallway. Breonna Taylor was in the hallway. So Breonna Taylor's in the hallway with him as he's firing at the door. So that's the only thing that, like, I can't understand how he got that shot off but then didn't get shot back if they're shooting down that hallway. The big deal that just came out, and what everyone's so upset about, besides the riots that happened after she died because of the narrative they were given, is that now those officers were not being charged, and only one of them was being charged for wanton endangerment in the first degree. Here's the issue. Here's what everyone's kind of freaking out about. The thing that I'm hearing now is America cares more about property than they do about black people. That's absurd. That's obnoxious. The first thing you got to understand, we're not talking about convictions here. This man wasn't convicted. It was simply the announcement that the grand jury is deciding that they're going to charge him with wanton endangerment. This is a grand jury, folks. This is not a police department. These are people like you and me, like our aunties and our uncles and our teachers and our plumbers. They're not cops. The grand jury gets together. The prosecutor delivers his little speech. They are allowed to ask questions. If he's provided probable cause, basically being able to justify the arrest of whatever he did, then they say, okay, you're good. But if the grand jury says, you didn't meet the elements, we don't think this is even going to want to go to trial, then they say no, and that's what happened. He's not getting charged with murder. But the prosecutor did bring forth the wanton endangerment in the first degree. I believe a link to that Kentucky law down here. But I'm going to read it for you. It's in 508.060 of the Kentucky Revised Statutes. And it is called wanton endangerment in the first degree. It says a person is guilty of wanton endangerment in the first degree when, under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life, he wantonly engages in conduct which creates a substantial danger of death or serious physical injury to another person. Wanton endangerment in the first degree is a Class D felony. 1 to 5 years in prison. The grand jury stated that he wantonly shot a gun into apartment 3 next to Taylor's unit. He's being charged with wantonly, meaning not caring, having a disregard for life, through apartment 3, even though she's in apartment 4. But I can tell you where this is going to go. He's not going to get convicted of this. That was a move that they said, this is the one that we have the most that we may be able to charge, and we got to give him something. The city's going to burn. And they gave him wanton endangerment. He's going to beat it because you have to prove, based on what I just read in the 508.060, It has to be under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life. Basically what Derek Chauvin did, having extreme indifference to the value of human life. He wantonly engaged in conduct which created a substantial danger of death or serious physical injury. Just shooting into the other apartment. But I think he's going to, I don't think that case is going to go because he was in the process of doing his job. He didn't fire for no reason. He was getting fired upon. And they didn't know where those bullets were coming from. And oftentimes in an apartment, you got thin walls. They're not even sure if it came down a hallway. It could have come through a door. Could have come through a wall. But they hear it. And in emergency situations like that, you're aiming your weapon where you're hearing that gun fire. You're trying to protect yourself. There's enough of a reasonable doubt. And he pled guilty. He pled not guilty to this, by the way. But there's enough doubt. And all you need is just a smidgen. I think there's going to be reasonable doubt. And he's going to get off on this one. And then the streets are going to burn. That's what I think is going to happen to that, which is really sad. I feel like things are going to get really bad if this thing happens before the election. After the election, I'm not sure it's going to be so crazy because the media is so heavily involved in this. But when this guy gets off on those crimes, it's going to be crazy. Cities are going to burn because people are going to think, oh, this is corruption at its finest. And that's not what it is. It's probably going to be a jury trial. Those are our peers, guys. Those are people like me and you. And people like me and you, if they say they don't have enough beyond a reasonable doubt, then he gets off. And I think we have that. But people are going to be outraged. So what I think we do from here is every time a story comes out, we don't jump to conclusions. We let it float for a little bit. Okay? Just let it rest. Don't jump to conclusions. As a cop, there's one thing I know. The media doesn't get it right. You don't see it right on the news. I've been sitting in a squad room after having done a case and watch my case pop up on the TV in the squad room, and it was all wrong. It happens just like that. People jump to conclusions, and they want sensationalism, and they want views, so you're Googling them, looking up the case on their online newspaper. So let's not jump to conclusions. I'm really working hard on not jumping to conclusions, even on Breonna Taylor's case or on George Floyd's case or whoever's case. I just want to read the facts. I'm going to go there. I'm going to read the warrant myself. I'm going to read the affidavits. I'm going to read the timelines, statements that people gave. We got tons of phone calls that were recorded where these people are talking about drugs and money and all that. But we wouldn't have known that if you just heard this news story. So I think that the first thing we need to do is take things with a grain of salt. Just recognize it may be all wrong. We're going to let it float. Don't jump to conclusions. You can say, if this is true, that's sad. But we're going to wait and see what happens. We got to trust the legal system here. We have to rely on that. The rule of law. As things come up, you frequently will change your mind. And then you'll save yourself a lot of drama if you don't do that. Just let it float. Read up, do your homework, all that good stuff. But, man, people are rioting in the streets over something that was legit. And this is my opinion about this, is that this was a justified warrant. This was a bad dude, a bunch of bad dudes doing bad things, bad for the neighborhood. It was dangerous. And I think that overall, because of what happened, we found out that the warrant was good. Because look what they found. The drugs and the guns and the suspects they were going after. So we know that warrant was a good warrant. And we know their intel was good intel. We know that the due process happened. The investigation was there. It was solid. And a judge signed off on it. And we know for sure that they knew what they were getting into. You can't say that officers can't go in there and not be ready to shoot their gun, because look what happened. They asked for a no-knock warrant for a reason. And they got shot at. And until you've been shot at, you need to reserve your opinion on whether they should have shot back or not. I heard too many people saying they can't believe that these officers weren't charged for her death. That's not how the law works. We do not arrest people based on popular opinion. We have to use law. We have to use the courts. When we start arresting people because of popular opinion, that's when we get into trouble. The Massey case comes to mind for those of you who are familiar in Hawaii or abroad. Look up the Massey case. If you want to talk about punishing people, convicting people because of popular opinion, that's why we have the rule of law. People will be convicted if we have the evidence. And this grand jury decided we didn't have enough to charge this guy. The court case has still got to happen. That doesn't mean he's even going to get found guilty of this, and I don't think he will. So it's really sad that Breonna Taylor died. There's no getting past that. I'm full of sorrow knowing that she died, because she didn't have to die. But I do think that the burden does not fall on the police officers as much as it falls on her and her boyfriend. This is precisely the reason why you don't do criminal activity. This is precisely the reason why you don't date men who have illegal firearms, who are felons, who traffic drugs. This is precisely why you don't date a dude that has 4 trap houses and the cops are watching him, who's sending drugs via the mail. We're talking federal crimes. That's why you don't do those things. The burden of this tragedy falls on her boyfriend and her. As sweet of a girl as she might have been, as much as she was maybe trying to get her life right, or maybe she wasn't, I don't know her. The burden falls on her and her boyfriend. Don't shoot at the police. But they were the ones doing wrong. Say what you will about the war on drugs. You might have an argument there. Is the war on drugs worth it? You might have an argument there. But let's not forget, they found a dead body in the rental car that belonged to Breonna Taylor. And it was all related to the drug game. And we had felons who were not allowed to have guns that had pistols and long guns. All because of the drug game. So I am sorry. Rest in peace, Breonna Taylor. I wish you could have lived long enough to turn things around. I wish you could have lived to have kids and to have a long life. But her life was taken because of what she was involved in. Those officers did not mean to shoot her. Here's the problem. Here's the one problem that I find with this situation, is that as a police officer, it is your responsibility, and this is drilled in your head and there's no getting around it, that you are responsible for every round that is sent downrange. It's ingrained in who you are as a cop. Your background and the things that fall behind your target are so important and determine whether or not you shoot. So if this officer would have hit somebody else and they would have died, it would have been his fault. You can't just shoot anywhere, not thinking about what's behind your target. Thankfully, nobody died. But the only defense that he has for that is that he was taking fire. And if you've never taken fire, you don't know what it's like. You hear that gunshot and then everyone else starts firing and you don't know who's firing what. All you know is you got fired on and you're having a gunfight. You're going home to your kids. You hear where it's coming from, you aim that direction, and you fired. And unfortunately, Breonna Taylor was shot by rounds that were meant for that man that was in there with her, who was firing on officers. And that man was a coward and ran and left Breonna in that hallway. He knew what he was getting into. So I'm really sad about that. I'm also really sad that there's officers getting shot in Louisville, Kentucky over this. This case was precisely an example of how the justice system should work. That's what this is. And this case is precisely an example of how bad the media can get it, how off they can be. This shows us that our justice system works, but our media system doesn't. But let's not forget the situation that she put herself in by being with a drug dealer who had guns and drugs and tons of money. It wasn't worth it. And I don't think Breonna Taylor would say it was worth it either. She got in over her head, and that's the sad part, is we lost a child, basically. Someone who could have done good for this world and won't have the chance. And that is a tragedy. But I am glad that those officers were not charged, because what I read, everything was legit. I just want to say thank you for listening. I'm glad you stuck around. All right, guys. Well, that was it. I hope you learned something. I hope this brought some value to you. If you did and you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so that you know when more videos are coming up. We do appreciate all the support here at Living the Dream. You guys are the best. And until the next time, aloha.